as you all know, that on my State of the City address to you all is more in the nuts and the bolts to show you all what's working and what maybe we need to improve on, what it was accomplished for 2021 as we move forward here at the beginnings of 2022. There's a lot of good information, a lot of data. I know a lot of times I'm more of the data geek, but to me, numbers give you true value of what's working and not working with no emotion attached. So we start out with all city funds. As you can see with all city funds, from CWSS to the electric system, all the way down to, if you take the city funds all the way as a whole, even how much sizable down the salaries are a part of that. And so you can see a lot of times people like to focus on the board. A lot of times with if you're top heavy, if you have too many staff and all those kind of things. So that's why I show you all these numbers to show you that we're well below expectations of where even a lot of companies would perform with those type of numbers. When you look at the all fund salary breakdown, like most cities, police departments are a big component of that because safety in the communities are primary. You all take up a whopping 0.67% within the whole budget. And, it's because all the big money that you all make being in those positions of aldermen making $200 a month and the mayor getting $400 a month. So as you can see, it's not a big money maker by no means. The general fund breakdown, when you look at the general fund as a snapshot and where a lot of those funds are distributed out from transfers, as you know, the transfer from 2021 would start trending down as a result of the MS fund that has been added to with the sales tax. But also in 2021, as we get down here further, you're going to see that number went down significantly because of the performance of the Parks Department. When you go further down in the general fund breakout of salaries, you can see the lion's share, of course, to the police department, similar to in other departments, is always going to be a high because you can't really attach the police department to any other funds. It's a pure general fund item that has to be paid for through the general fund dollars, where other positions through finance can be spread out through other funds because of all of the work that they do within the enterprise funds, as well as through public works and community development and the rest of those funds as well. When you look at the enterprise fund, the lion's share of that would be the electric system. And we split out the electric system later as its own fund. But in comparison to the water and sewer and the salaries there and benefits, 8%. And then the solid waste is really a pass through for the city because we really don't make money off of anything with the solid waste. The 2021 enterprise fund salaries are broken out, as you can see, pretty evenly across most of the departments. And as a result, that's where we get a lot of our staffing. The debt issuances, as you can see for 2020, which is your far left of your screen. And then you can see in 2023, that number on your debt continues to trend downward along that debt. So the things in which you all have done to get things done at the community center, to the lakes and the UV and the regional retention has not trended the city toward increasing their debt, but actually decreasing your debt over the long term. The total expenditure, public utilities, CWS, electric and refuse is, of course, the higher expenses, and then public capital outlay and public safety are your top three. in which the city invests its money and its time in total expenditure by fund. And you take those electric fund, of course, being a larger fund. Some people don't always say, well, why is the electric fund that large? Well, if you look at what we pay to MPUA, so I think it was just this last month, we had to sign off on a $645,000 payment for 1 month. And so that's why you see the higher numbers a lot of time in electric, is because we pay a lot to those companies to MPUA for those funds. And then, of course, your general fund, CSS, and then community center and emergency services now are pretty even on theirs. If you take property taxes, based on a $145,000 market value home, that was the average that I received from Mr. Mullendorf. The numbers that you see before you are actually from him. I just took those numbers and inputted them from him. Of course, 81% of a person's property tax bill would go to the school district, and 9% would go to the city. So I like to tell people we don't ask any more than what Jesus asked for, and we don't even hit the 10%. But the rest of those funds that you can see down through there for the Cass County Road and Bridge, the library, hospital maintenance, 2% of that would be the hospital, which is Cass Medical. And then really the library, based on the election from last year, went up a little bit, but it's about 4% in relationship to the third from the city. Then we get into the building permits. So one of the things to note from the building permits is the increase that you've seen based on the valuation. 2020 to 2021, you see 18.2 million and up to 32 million in valuation. But if you take that from 2019 to 2021, you're almost seeing a quadruple of evaluation of what our investment that's been happening here in Harrisonville. So you're seeing a great investment that's happening in the valuation. When you look at the building permits, the 581 in total, residential miscellaneous can be anything from a fence permit to a shed permit. But you see that in commercial miscellaneous, the smaller things is what you see in a lot of the smaller permits. But you're seeing a continual uptick in those valuations and those permits. If you look at the building permits from 2018, 2019 up to 2021 there, you're seeing a significant increase with those. And you also see that almost a doubling in 2020 to 2021 in our inspections that are being performed as a result of that. So Mr. Arthur's group is doing a lot more work in inspections than they have previously. New single family permits, you're seeing in 2018, there were 10, 2019, there were 9, and that's kind of been the standard for many years, around anywhere from 5 to 10. And last year, or in 2020, there were 14, but last year, from January to December, there was actually 31 that were issued for 2021. So you're seeing almost a doubling that's happening there. And I can tell you that in January of this year, we had 7 permits pulled for the Glen Eagle. And then here in February, another 7 permits were pulled again. So already with just that one subdivision, there's 14 that were already in the year for. So that's already matching 2020's amount. But if you look at the additional ones that are coming in, the plats and everything that you approved tonight, we'll continue to see a trend up in those building permits. Code enforcement is continuing mostly with the same type of issues that are there from the grass to illegal signs. But the one thing that's a little new in comparison to previous years is the business licenses being expired. That became a really big issue in 2020. And we talked to Mr. Arthur as a part of that process, because really Tammy wasn't able to really have anyone to go out and say, hey, you don't have a building permit, and follow up with that. So what we did with a part of that process is what says that we have the option to utilize that in even the court process. So you're seeing that right there, just for 2021, 81 business license expired and didn't get them renewed. And that becomes a really big deal with the state, especially collection of sales tax, all those kind of issues. And so we're trying to stay on top of that and make sure that those are being completed in a timely manner. Code enforcement inspections, you can see, has been up significantly. If you look at just 2019 at 284 and up to 2021 at 2,500, almost 2,600, that is spurred along by the board's directive and trying to clean up things and hold things to a different standard. And so that code enforcement cases reflects that as a reflection of that. And with that became dealing with the vacant and abandoned, blighted homes. And as you can see, the cases that were opened and cases that were closed, you don't see that it's just a huge increase on those, because we give people time and the judge is working with them to give them time to address these properties. But what you can see through there is 20 and 21 was a banner year in getting people to clean up those properties and eliminated those properties. When you see that currently for sale and currently rehab, those are as a result of the codes enforcement pushing the envelope on those kind of issues and people selling them so they get addressed. And the kind of homes there that you see in the picture are the kind of homes that we're dealing with and that we're trying to address and get them removed. But we even tell on ourselves. You see the government there, that's on us with the police department building and the old electric and water building. So we're not just holding anyone that's a resident or business that is accountable. We are holding ourselves accountable as well. And as you all know, we have submitted for grants for both of those buildings to try to get help. And we've got budgeted monies for the matching grants in this year's budget to try to meet that goal in getting those buildings that are blighted taken down. Police department calls for service has increased greatly from 2020 to 2021. The reports are continuing as far as taking reports, a downward trend. Arrests are kind of maintaining the same level that they were in the previous years. When you look at the police department and traffic, if anything, it depends on who you are, where if they think the police department's being too rough and giving everybody a ticket, to people that think they should get a ticket. But we have been more lenient in 2021 in comparison to 2022, where about 76% of the stops were given warnings instead of citations. When you look at the police department's call for service, everything seems to be trending down, except theft reports, and those kind of calls for service are kind of trending up along that manner. And so that's still kind of an issue that we continue to work on in the community. Animal control, 2020 was a kind of abnormal year for animal control, as you all know. And so we've seen kind of an uptick in the animal control for the dogs on relinquished dogs. We haven't seen as far as the euthanization really being an increase as a result of that. But we're seeing that it's pretty much trending back to what it was back in 2019 and previous years on the amounts of impoundment and the amount of dogs being relinquished back to their owners. Similar to for the cats that are at the animal control, from those that are adopted out to those that are brought in. And we're continuing to be more what I would say normal numbers that we've had in previous years. Municipal court overview, the amount of cases filed, cases opposed, and warrants. And what I'd like to point out is in that 2021 on the far right of your screen, you see that even though we have cases filed that may be a little lower than last year or before, and the cases opposed, of course, as a result of that being the same, look at the warrants, which is trending along with what would be the failure to appear. So we're just seeing that number grow as a result of SB 5 and 572 and people not showing up to court and not following up with court. I did talk to Representative Hafner, who had filed a bill to try to again correct that law and to make it an opportunity for people to be held accountable. And he told me a couple of weeks ago that they're trying to kill the bill again, and it's not moving. As you know, there's a certain author of that SB 5 and 572 that's running for the U.S. Senate right now. And so that's why it seems to not be getting any traction again to try to get that corrected. If you look at the top violations that are running through municipal court, there has been this past year has been an increase of possession of drug paraphernalia. And then I want to point out to you what I pointed out earlier is the new business license that end up to the court. And based on the ones, it was around 81 that they dealt with last year, but 48 of them ended up to the level of municipal court. That's after being contacted, being told, and no response. And then they end up with a citation to the municipal court. Again, on the SB 5 and 572, just wanted to point out those numbers again. This is the numbers that we pull that and send to the representative when they're talking about the bill. And as you can see, those failure to appear are continuing to trend upward and sustain high in comparison to what the amount of people that are supposed to show up. Emergency services is trended pretty much the same way. We've actually seen an increase in transportation of those transfers as well as of calls. And if you see on the write-off there, it's averaging about 35% of the cost to us that's having to be written off because insurance not paying for those portions of it. So that's still pretty standard in the industry. These are those calls for services, and as I stated earlier, we've seen an increase on those calls for services from 2020 to 2021. And we move to our utility department. In those comparisons of shutoffs and new accounts, cutoffs and late payment. So on average, the utility department is dealing with about 639 customers each month that are paying late. And on average, about 46 per month that are being notified that they're getting ready to be cut off. And then 35 a month that actually average out to getting shut off each month. So in addition with that, they're dealing with about 89 new customers that they're setting up each month as well. So it's still a very busy division of the city dealing with a lot of moving parts. CWSS, which is our sewer and water department guys that are dealing with about 8,830 linear feet of lines that they jetted last year, dealing with grease interceptor inspections, which is something that they're doing more of now because that's been a problem that they've had to deal with. The hydrants that were flushed last year, a lot of them hadn't been done in a long time. And Matt has been coming up with a great system to go through and flush the system and checking those fire hydrants as well. And they can see they get a lot of Missouri 1 call tickets that they have to go out and mark those utilities. Wastewater plant hours and the water plant hours, biggest thing I'd like to point out on your screen there to the left, you can see an increase on the lab testing, DNR testing. One of the things that Carl's not been happy with and Nick's not been happy with is that DNR is requiring a lot more testing than they would normally require. And we're trying to push back because a lot of that testing that they're requiring is something that we don't need and they don't really need. But when they ask for all that testing, it essentially costs us a whole lot more money to get that testing done. And so last year, you've seen a trend where it jumped up there and it's still jumping even more because they're adding more due to EPA laws that they say are coming down the pipeline. But we're trying to push back on that to where we don't have to do as much testing as they want us to do because it's not needed. Total operations of the airport, you've seen an increase of activity at the airport from local operations to total operations to the internet. And, that to explain everybody, because I was the same way as everybody else, what does that mean? Internet operations is transient air traffic. This is a type of aircraft traffic that's normally planes stopping for fuel or visitors that are coming to Harrisonville for business reasons and those kind of needs. And we've seen an increase in that. But the biggest part of that, to what you've seen, is the amount of fuel that was sold had increased dramatically. If you all remember in the budget amendment that we brought to you all there toward the third quarter was the need to buy more fuel because we were selling more fuel. And as you can see, that on the gross revenue alone, tremendously went up about 40%. And so we're seeing a lot more activity out that way. I'm sure that it, with what we have planned for that project, is probably spurring some of that interest. Public work, the streets department, they spend a lot of time, of course, on road maintenance, stormwater maintenance, and all other kind of maintenances. So that's where they spend the most amount of their time throughout our community. The electric department, we've seen is running pretty close to what we saw as just a little slight increase on the KWH loss. And one of the things I wanted to point out in this on the left on your outages, in 2021 and compared this to 2020, you see total outages that are kind of a little lower, but you don't see some of the significance on that. But then you see outages at the Royal Sub that went down a little bit. Then you see that the outages on the North Sub went up a little bit. But then you look at the outages on the South Sub, and that is a dramatic drop from 78 down to 15 outages on that. And if you can recall, that is where we have a lot of the tree work that's going on in the community in and through that area. And it's working because you can see the areas that they're working on and that they're removing those barriers of trees, that it's, as a result, cutting down on the amount of outages for that area. Same thing in 2021 is in 2020. Wildlife is a lot of the reasons. Fried squirrel, fried raccoon gets a lot of that. And the trees as continue to drown. So everything trended downward from 2020 to 2021 on those outages and the reason for those outages. The park department, the community center, wow, they've just done really great this past year. And the investment that you all did in the community center is really being noticed. And as a result of that, you're seeing the numbers of that investment being reflected back. If you look at the daily passes, up $20,000. You look at the membership, around $150,000 that's increased just to the community center. The room rentals went from 15,000 to 42,000. Just a tremendous increase on those memberships and daily passes. And then you see a lot of the recreational programs that are reflecting that in this next screen, because you have essentially the summer camp from 19,000 2020 up to 74,000. The before and after school program, 21,000 in 2020, and last year it was 37,000, just up across the board, all the way across the board. And so I just give kudos to Grant and his team out there, because they're doing a really good job of increasing the investment into the community center. If you take the park fund levy, which is the levy, the revenue on the levy that is a part of that, taxes that came in on that, that came in close to about the same. Charges for service went down a little bit, but programs went up. But I wanted to point the general fund to you. So you can look at the transfer from the general fund that's coming in for that park revenue. Look at the significant drop in those needed funds based upon the performance that's happening on those programs and everything for those payment. Just wonderful to see that reflection. C-Click Fix's first full year that you all can review a lot of what public input on these. Of course, I'm sure you're all really surprised that the trash and recycling was the most reported during the 2021 year. The other when I'll go through the other component, it could be, trash and recycling, and they just didn't click on trash and recycling, they clicked on other. It could be a water meter, it could be a tree. They just clicked other than clicking on the actual issue. But then there are some other things that were just kind of unique type of things that we reported. Some of them were really unique that they reported that there's no category for. But you can see that having a good response from people that are sending in those type of requests, because there's opportunity for that input to the board. If you look at the response times, the average days, which we average acknowledgement, essentially is 0.59 when staff is acknowledging when people are turning in any type of complaint or need. And then the average days to close out, that means that we addressed their issue or got it completed, is around 3 days from the time that they reported it. So staff is responding to that and getting and following up on those. When you look at the wards, and based upon the wards that are utilizing they C-Click Fix and what they are mainly, of course, trash again. In most of the wards was the biggest complaint. Ward 2 had the biggest complaints on the trash, and followed by the other that was utilized for that. Then you're seeing pretty much even kill along the others, except for potholes. There seemed to be a little more complaint for potholes in Ward 3 than there was the rest of the wards. And then if you look at the usage of those, you got Ward 1 or Ward 2 was used the highest with around 262 C-Click Fix tickets. Ward 3, and then Ward 4, and then Ward 1. So Ward 2 is utilizing it the most, followed up pretty closely by Ward 3, and then Ward 4 and Ward 1. So we like to split that out for you all, so you kind of see what are some of the bigger complaints coming in from your ward. And it's always a little different. Not each ward is always the same on what their complaints are. So when you look at there it is. Some of the accomplishments in administrative services. Of course, the city received the first budget award in 2021 for the 2020 budget. The pay performance plan was completed in 2021, where the staff were evaluated based on their goals at the beginning of 2021. Completed that first wage and a position study that hadn't been done in over 16 years. Secured an amazing note for 1.35 interest to complete major repairs to the community center and the outdoor pool. Instituted a public-private partnership with Enterprise, which over a period of time was hopefully going to be a venture that'll be more self-funded. We dealt with the trash company going bankrupt and getting the JFL in here and reducing that problem, and then brought information on the EMS deficit issues and the voters last year for the first time passed the EMS 20, and then for the first time in 2022, you were able to pass a balanced budget for that EMS fund. Community development, you had Aldi's open up, Culver's opening up, eliminated 2 blighted properties, highest year of blighted properties being demolished or replaced or remodeled, highest year evaluation of new development, addition remodels. Then you had, we had updated our economic incentives, and we also completed the historic preservation plan for the downtown area. And then new housing starts are the highest that they've been in over 10 years for those departments and divisions. Public Works, managing the SEMA grant program, designing Route 2 street improvements, and managing the construction of the wastewater treatment facility disinfection, as well as the drawings of Muddy Creek detention and getting that forwarded, managing the design the city lake and Lake Luna, and then engineering designing the sewers on Blueberry to James and Crestwood to Delmar, Mechanic to Halsey, and then the street side, over 2,244 feet of curb replacement on Parkwood Drive between Ann Street and about 1,698 feet on Twin Pines Drive. We contracted and paved 3.78 miles of lane miles of streets. Public Works streets conducted about 1.9 miles of chip and seal. They also completed 1.69 feet of curb and 1,524 square feet of sidewalk, 4 ADA ramps. They themselves as staff did almost 3,500 square feet of street repavement or street pavement repair, which is about 173 tons and 27 tons of cold patch. And then did about 4.7 lane miles of crack seal, and then even did about that amount in comparison to the airport runway as the crack seal. The CWSS crew, they implemented that grease interceptor program, bilateral flushing that hasn't been done before, utilizing the new equipment. I can tell you that the mayor can tell you that as a result of that new equipment, we were able to address a complaint that came into the mayor on a sewer issue that was not dealt with in previous years. And because of that camera and that investment on that camera, we were able to find there was actually a collapse in the line and fixed it, and making that resident a lot happier without the backups that we're having. The water and wastewater plants, one thing I wanted to point out, so you got 348 million gallons of safe, reliable, cost-effective water, but we treated 645 million gallons of wastewater treated. So we have a huge I&I infiltration, because that means that stormwater that's getting into our system and that is being treated down there at the treatment plant. So this stormwater money that you're spending is going to make huge impacts and dividends to help us with a lot of that doesn't need to be going down there to be replaced. They made some major replacements of motors and transducer at the wastewater plant, as well as aeration digest blowers. Trust me, you want them working, or things are smelt. And the valves that were on our sludge holding pit as well. And they did it in a way to shore up that any future repairs would be easier. Parks and Recs, I pointed out earlier, the community center has had a lot of replacement and repairs, from HVAC to the flooring upstairs and downstairs. Windows leaking have been repaired. Ductwork's been replaced and repaired. Indoor pool pumps have been replaced. Membership increased dramatically. auction off the old equipment, brought in the new equipment, and then multiple beautification projects they've been doing throughout our parks. Some of them that they're doing in conjunction out there with the City Lake and Lake Luna right now, and removing a lot of the debris and a lot of the things that make it more difficult to see the beauty of our lakes. The economic development, Jim's been bringing in a lot of and meeting with a lot of our industrial employers. We've been talking to them about some of their challenges and growth plans, and addressing some of their issues, assisting them with their growth and success. We've been working, of course, on the comprehensive plan, multiple open houses, steering committee, technical committee, small groups, non-for-profits, other local government groups that we've met with throughout that. Coordinated a video. It just got finalized. I'm going to tell you that that video that will go out here in the near future that Jim worked with that video company on has done a great job, and it's going to be really showcasing our community. And then he's met with several site selection consultants on about 12 project leads on various scopes and industries. And then the police department implemented its own honor guard in 2021. 6 members of the department stepped forward with the interest and have been participating in that program. They begun practice. I think we'll get to see them this year at the when we do the 50-year anniversary in the park. And then community involvement opportunities. One of the things, as you know, the board and everyone would like to see our police officers involved in the community. So part of their goals, even in 2021, was completing a certain amount of community involvement opportunities within the community. And last year, in 2021, the group, as a group, they attended well over 500 hours of community involvement opportunities throughout the community. This is everything from community groups, neighborhood associations, civic clubs, non-for-profit, sporting events, school district functions, all those that, you know, they like to see our officers and be involved in the community. New dash and body cameras that replaced the old and antiquated ones. The chief is really happy with the quality of videos now. And to me, them are very important for the safety of our officers, to make sure that we have those things covered for them. And then in 2021, the VITS program had a veteran volunteer program step up to coordinate position, and it's doing really well. And the VIPS membership increased by 33% in 2021. And so we are glad to see that, because we were concerned with the coordinator having to resign in 2020 due to health issues with his wife. So with that, Madam Mayor and Aldermen, that to me is 2021 is really showing a lot of the investment that you did in 2020 and continued in 2021. And we are seeing the beginning of the growth in Harrisonville in 2021. And I think this year you're even going to see even that much more. That's my presentation to you all. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I tried to go as quick as possible, so I didn't put you all to sleep.
Well, I know that you're a numbers guru and you thrive on data, but you know, figures don't lie. And so I think that it's a great summary of all the exciting things that have been going on in Harrisonville of late, and truly the beginning of growth going forward.